Kia ora, I'm Amanda Miller and welcome to Am and Courageous Conversations, a podcast that digs into the lives of those who are prepared to live courageously, no matter the cost. Today's guest is someone who is an absolutely staunch feminist with a sassy amount of energy, and I like to think of her like Marmite. A little bit of her can go a long way, and she goes with everything. I adore her. Welcome to you, Angela Meyer. You are a goddess.
Thank you so much. A Marmite goddess.
Yes,
That's
I know.
even better.
Did you
I love
that?
it.
I was just thinking about it, and it just made sense. It's like you are, in that pantry of life, you go with every loaf of bread and pick up and run with things, and it does. Yeah, it's an experience.
Thank you. I thought you were going to say an acquired taste.
No.
Probably
because we've all been raised on Marmite, so we're very much, you're part of us.
Yeah.
Angela, let's talk about what you are now, how you describe yourself now, is this amazing title called a gender intelligence strategist, advocate and entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, it's taken a while to kind of land on that because I think a lot of the work I do kind of spans across lots of different areas, and I was thinking about what's the one thread that sort of goes across everything, and I was like, well, it is actually, there's always this element of gender, and when I dug into it more, it was like, well, how do we talk intelligently about gender? How can I kind of put the advocacy work that I do, but also I have this real kind of business brain, so I'm kind of like, it's not just trying to advocate for change at a government level, it's how do I also create products or services that are really going to have a radical impact on positive change for women, specifically. Yeah.
See, that is the Marmite. How do you do all those things and manage to spread it across all those critical areas? That's just, in terms of a human feat, it sounds damn near impossible.
Well, I think it's because with the work that we do, for example, at Project Gender, we always ask women what they need and want. And so it's always guided by that. It's always guided by the ideas of others. It's not necessarily that it's just me. You know, I have amazing people that I work with. And when I think about advocacy, you can't do that alone. You need to build a community around you, and also in business. And I think my background, I have a degree in theatre and film, and that actually was a great place to start because you can't do theatre by yourself. You have to have other people. And so that collaborative spirit is really strong. So that sort of allows, I suppose, the Marmite to spread.
You're running with us. So let's unpack some of that whole where you come from and how you've developed into what you are giving the world today.
Yeah.
So when I look back, I go, oh my God, what hasn't Angela done? So you did the Red Hot Bitches.
Real hot
bitches.
Yeah,
sorry. Why do I always call it Red Hot? Because they are red hot.
People do, but we're real, we're hot, we're bitching. Yeah.
A dance troupe of diverse women just doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been going now for 18 years. We just had our 18th birthday. We usually just sort of try and put our birthday around Madonna's birthday. And
as you do, yeah.
As we do. And it's still a really strong community. And actually it's interesting because that community has grown and evolved over the 18 years.
Literally grown and evolved. Yes. Bodies, yes.
Bodies. I mean, we've had babies, we've got married or we've got divorced, it's been this really amazing community of women and men, and all through it is the power of dance to really help us, bring out all of those feelings. And in lots of ways, that was the first kind of foray into real activism, sort of by stealth, and it was before body positivity was I suppose, a word or, a concept that we talk about now. It was just kind of like, you're real, you're hot, you're bitching, your ass looks amazing, and that G-string lycra, and it was just it was kind of revolutionary to be out wearing lycra when when we weren't really skinny women, we were just there's something really powerful about women enjoying themselves and just frickin' going for it and pelvic thrusting in people's faces. And I remember lots of people saying, we're kind of terrified by you, but we're desperate to join you because
Absolutely. I've been one of those watching at parties and events where you've performed. It's like, wow, this is so infectious.
Yeah. And
liberating.
And I mean, we've never managed really to pull from it. You know, we always thought, hey, maybe we'll be able to pull, but...
Well, speaking about pulling, you also set up way before Tinder and what is it, Bumble and all the rest of them, the Man Bank?
The Man Bank. Yes, gosh, I'd forgotten about that. I hadn't put that on my list. So that came out of, I'd been living in the UK and I'd started something called Dating for Shoes, which was all about trying to really sort of shake up the idea of dating. And when I got back to New Zealand, I was... I suppose horrified by the fact that so many of my amazing girlfriends and guy friends had never been on a date. And I was like, come on, this is ridiculous. And we were really relying on that 2 a.m. scramble to kind of get together with people. And, you know, sometimes that works out, but often it doesn't. And so I was really like, well, you know, a date is not a marriage proposal. It is literally just a date. And so we started the Man Bank, my friend Jane Chewings and I, and men could deposit themselves in the bank and women could take out short-term loans, and it was very kind of my first foray into the world of finance perhaps, but it was very, you know, lighthearted and just really trying to kind of like shake it up and make it a bit easier for people to find connection really.
So all of this underlines, before we get to the stuff that's really powering you now in terms of the work and gender equity, etc., is showing how much courage you clearly have to do what you've done, even just with the Real Hot Bitches and the Man Bank. That's courageous.
I don't think of it as courageous. I was reflecting on that question and I was like, that to me doesn't feel very courageous. It feels just kind of like, oh, you might as well give it a go. And maybe, I understand for a lot of people that would be terrifying, but for me that isn't where my courage comes from. For me, courage often is about me having to do something like physically very challenging or emotionally challenging. That's where I really have to dig into what courage I might have. But in the world of, I suppose, putting things into the world, there's usually an amazing group of people. And so it's not really me, it's more a group or it's a concept or something like that.
The collaboration.
Yeah.
So talk about, if you, in that sense of where you've been and putting yourself into situations, you have had to be courageous. You've damn near died in the process of living your life with a 1-year-old. Take us back to that event.
Yes. Well, my husband and I decided that we were going to sail across the Pacific, and that had been Alex's dream for a very long time. And when we got together, you know, I was really drawn to the fact that he was a real adventurer. And I suppose when I think back on my life, I've always been very inspired by those very adventurous women, you know, going on these big voyages or expeditions. You know, for a long time I wanted to be an explorer. I also wanted to be a nun, so we can come back to that.
Right.
And, you know, there was, you know, the inevitable, I want to be an actor, etc. But I was really, I sort of didn't know what I didn't know, if I'm really honest. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we bought this yacht in Aruba, did it up. It needed a lot of work. We had a 1-year-old and we set sail. And
as you do with a 1-year-old.
Yes, and it was incredibly difficult. Like, I am not going to lie. It was so hard because I was just so exhausted the whole time, because we were doing 4-hour watches and then you'd come off watch and you'd still have a baby that you needed to look after. And, you know, the boat's moving the whole time and you know, we're in the Caribbean, we're in Panama, we're in Colombia, you know, there's all of these, like, wildly exciting, but also the sort of level of stress and fear actually was very, very present. And I didn't realise it until quite a bit later that actually I was kind of always in the state of fear. And then, and we had, you know, we were doing really well. We set sail out of Panama to make our voyage across the Pacific Ocean, and pretty much everything that could go wrong did go wrong. So we started taking on water. And, you keep the water out of the boat is always the golden rule. And we looked in the bilge, and the bilge was full of water. Our head seal blew out. It was kind of like just terrible things. And then our engine completely broke. So we were stranded out there. And I think we could have made it, maybe we could have, I don't know. We were almost at the Galapagos Islands, but we couldn't really make a safe landfall. And I think if Alex had been by himself, he probably would have kept going. But, he had me and he had a 1-year-old on board. And so we put off our emergency beacon, which I think has been like, it is one of those moments in your life where you go, everything is going to change now, and that really was the case. So we had this idea that we would live on the ocean. We were on our way to Brisbane. It was a very different life that we had kind of imagined for ourselves. But as soon as we pushed that button, we were like, that dream's over. And so, and then we were kind of waiting for quite a long time, because I don't know what I was expecting. I just kind of thought, okay, like in the movies, no,
beacon
people
goes
arrive.
Off. Ta-da, Here we are.
And it took a few days for people to arrive. And then a big Andover jet came over, and they were like, the radio sort of crackles into life. And they're like, are you the yacht experiencing difficulties? And I'm like, yes, we are. Come and help us. And then sort of over the waves in this Zodiac came the US Coast Guard, who were insanely good looking. That is one of my memories. And I also was like, I haven't showered for weeks. We had a baby on board, and so there was like nappies and, milk, and the place was a mess. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to tidy up. And then they were like, excuse me, ma'am, permission to board. I'm like, yes, please come on board. It was, when I think about it and those high levels of stress, what I ended up doing was just kind of comical in lots of ways. But they were incredible, and they really helped us, and we managed to sort of limp back to Panama, where we had, like the dream was dead. It was really heartbreaking in lots of ways, but we were alive. And we met when we went into the city. We went into this sort of mall to, send an email to my parents to just say, we're alive, because they got the call when the EPIRB went off. And this woman heard our New Zealand accent, and she was like, are you from New Zealand? And I was like, yes. And I hadn't actually spoken to anyone since the whole thing had happened. And she goes, are you okay? And I was like, I'm not okay. I'm really not okay. And she was kind of she was a little bit older than my mother, and she was from New Zealand, Jan, and they became kind of our guardian angels, and they were like, come and stay with us for a few days. Oh. And I was like, yes. And they loved having this little baby around. And, it was an incredible experience. And, like in the moment, I realised I'm very good under that sort of, like I just get very focused. But then later it was, the wheels fell off a little bit.
And not, again, with a not so ideal outcome.
Yeah, I mean, we have done a lot of sailing since we got back to New Zealand in our boat Astra, and have had many, many wonderful kind of adventures. But we moved to Auckland, from Wellington. I moved last year, and Alex and Dash came up this year. And
Dash
Alex
is your son.
Dash
yes.
is my son, yeah, our son. And Alex was bringing the boat up. We found the mooring and everything up here, and we're really excited about, being in the Hauraki Gulf, and being able to have this boat. And he'd spent a month down in Wellington prepping her for the voyage. And he's circumnavigated New Zealand previously, and, as I say, is a very experienced sailor. And I'd actually flown to Wellington that day to have a meeting with Christopher Luxon, which is a whole other story. But, I'd had this meeting, and I'd come out of the meeting, and I noticed that I had all of these missed calls from a Wellington number, and I thought, oh, God, that's really odd. Someone obviously really wants to get hold of me. So I called the number back, and I said, oh, it's Angela Meyer speaking. They said, we know who you are. I'm like, well, obviously, because you've been trying to call me. But actually, Alex had put his EPIRB off, and he had been sailing up the coast, and was about about 100 miles off the coast of Napier and had been hit by a rogue wave, and the wave had crushed the boat. The deck was all smashed off. He had been thrown off the boat, and subsequently at this time I didn't know, but he thought that was the end. He thought he was going to die, and they were like, we don't have much information, but we don't know. But his EPIRB has gone off. Would you be expecting that? And I said, well, I'm not expecting the EPIRB to go off, but I am expecting that he would be about that position in the ocean. And then we sort of had probably it was about maybe 24, 36 hours of not knowing.
No, all that time?
Yeah, well, because it was terrible, terrible weather, so they couldn't get anyone out to him. And when the boat had rolled, the mast had gone down, so, comms was really, couldn't get on the radio. And then, I don't consider myself like a really great sailor or anything like that, but I know enough to know our boat really well, and that actually he was in real danger. And they were like, we're going to try and send they did all ships. Anyone in the area, can you please go and check on this yacht? But again, there were 10-foot waves. It was horrific weather, and sort of through the night, I found out later the boat rolled a number of other times, and Alex's ribs were crushed. A terrible situation. And anyway, that's his story to tell, and he will. But long story short, those were probably the worst days of my life, and yeah.
Ange. So how do you process that time, unable to anticipate what the outcome is?
I think everything becomes very clear, and you just realise what's really important. Yeah, so, when we talk about courage, it's actually you just have to be in the moment. You just have to be there 100%. And also, my job as a parent at that point was to just be really present for Dash, and then be very hopeful, and trust these incredible people that rescued him.
So what an extraordinary tale of survival to be in the sea that long in that weather.
It is a miracle he survived.
And to be alive.
Yeah.
Wow, what a homecoming that must have been.
Yeah, so now we're all in Auckland, and it feels like a whole it just feels like this real new beginning in lots of ways.
Will you ever let him sail again? Is that part of the future?
We've already bought another boat.
Oh my gosh, you are tigers. You are outrageous.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like him without a boat is kind of not him, and we've just bought this beautiful old boat. I think we got the cheapest boat in New Zealand, and it's called Taitoa, and we're really excited to take her out this summer. And as a family, we're really great on the boat. It's like when we were at our best, and so we were like, let's do it.
And fear, that omnipresent force that you've recognised, how much is that going to come in the way of that experience for you and the family?
We took her out recently, and I was really nervous. I was actually afraid of the sea. I was like, I don't want to go near the sea. And then I was just like, the sea gave him back.
Beautiful way of putting it. That is absolutely so true. He didn't, whatever that was happening up there in the universe, there was a reason for him to come back to you and Dash. So that's a beautiful, beautiful story. Thank you, Ange.
It's okay.
I mean, I cannot imagine what Alex's experience was like, but I'm living with a partner who's has been diagnosed with PTSD as well, vicarious PTSD.
Oh, yeah.
So it doesn't go away. It's an ongoing thing, and it needs a lot of investment. And all of this has led you down this track of fundamentally advocating for women. You have recognised this gap in our, obviously, in how we're living, how we're being paid, how we're being treated, and you've constantly fought and advocated on behalf of women. That's draining.
Yeah, it is. Like, let's be honest.
Are we getting any better at it? Are we actually making progress?
No, in lots of ways. I mean, in lots of ways, yeah. If we think 50 years ago, what freedoms did women have? Okay, yes, in lots of ways, we have a lot more. But when we look at the numbers, when we do the research, which we do a lot of at Project Gender, things are not changing. In fact, we are backsliding. And I think in New Zealand, we really rest on our laurels of being the first country that gave women the vote. And we've had some lady prime ministers and that kind of thing. But
and look what happened then.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like we really need to kind of dig a bit deeper and go, well, our family violence stats are terrible. You know, research we've done shows that, 80% of women in this country feel afraid. And they're afraid not only for their physical safety, but also their financial security, all of these things.
And that research, that horrifying statistic is purely yours, or through the work you did with the Aotearoa Gender, Aotearoa Gender Intelligence Report.
Yeah.
Nothing like that had ever been done, where you examined the lives of 1,000 women and extracted some pretty scary and horrifying stats about just how we're living our lives.
Yeah.
Why did you do that? That was an enormous project, and again, it's a Marmite.
Yeah,
job.
I suppose I was really curious, and I also wanted to. I often think it's really important to follow the money, and I wanted to know how much was New Zealand women contributing to our GDP? Did we have that figure? And essentially we don't have that figure in New Zealand. And I really wanted to understand more about that. And I wanted to understand how do we, what is going on? Like what's the current state for women? And, I've worked in marketing and for a long time and, you always have to be very audience focused. So it's always like, well, what do your audience think and feel? And then you can create products or services or whatever it might be that will meet that need. And so that's really the whole kind of, I suppose, genesis of doing that research. And I thought that, there was so much gold in that report, many things that were terrible, but also you could flip those and go, here's a huge opportunity. And I thought a lot of businesses and organisations would be like, oh my God, this is amazing. We could do this, 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 and this. To meet those needs, because we know we have a market if we're just being purely kind of commercial about it. But no one actually took that up, and I was really horrified, but also I suppose disappointed and all the rest of it, which is where I've kind of now working at Project Gender, and we call ourselves a feminist innovation studio, which very much takes all the primary research that we do, insights research that Tanya Demet does as our head of research. And then we actually look at that and go, well, if this is a problem that people are saying they want support with, what is the solution? So in about 6 weeks, we're launching our first product out of Project Gender, which is called Kits, and these are at-home STI kits. So currently, it's very difficult to kind of test for STIs. You have to send your blood to, or not your blood, but your urine, etc., to a lab.
I'm sure everybody knows, but we're talking about sexually transmitted infections.
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And we did some research last year, online sex and dating research in New Zealand, and we discovered that the over 50s were dating quite dangerously. They were
true.
Yeah, true. They were going out and shagging around without any sort of protection.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What have we learned?
Well, I think because a lot of people were coming out of long-term marriages, for example, or relationships, and the sort of chance of pregnancy is a lot lower or non-existent.
Yeah.
And so people were just like, yeah, woohoo, let's go for it. And the rate of STIs amongst that cohort was really, really increasing.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and then, but also for younger people, so under the age of 35, there is a lot of STDs, and chlamydia is rife through the country. But what really got me was syphilis and gonorrhea are becoming more and more and more prevalent. And I'm like, aren't they diseases from the 19th century?
That is remarkable. And how do you reconcile that when all this education, and we've gone through and we're still living with HIV, all of that education of that era, where's it taken us? Backwards.
Well, actually, when you look at it, we don't have that same messaging around safe sex. We talk a lot about consent, which is fantastic, and I thoroughly applaud it. But with the advances, for example, within the HIV world, that message of actually safe sex in terms of using condoms, etc., that's not so prevalent. And so we're seeing this, one of the young people said, if you get chlamydia, it's just like an ear infection. And
right.
I'm like, in some ways I'm like, great, we're normalising it and we're talking about it, but I'm like, it is not like an ear infection. It can make you infertile, which when you're maybe 19, you're not thinking about that. But when you're 35, say, and you're really wanting to have children and you can't, that becomes a huge issue. And most STIs are really easily treated.
That is amazing that you've gone down that track. See, it's like, what don't you get your hands into?
But if you start with what women say they need and want, then you just follow that thread, and then you go, okay, well, what is a solution? And that's kind of what led us to that. And it sort of also came out of all the work that we'd done around advocating for a national women's health strategy, which, again, we asked women what they needed and wanted from their political parties at the last election in 2020. And healthcare was just off the charts as one of the most important issues aside from childcare. And so, again, I was like, well, what's the strategy? Oh, my God, there is no strategy. Let's get a strategy. I don't know. Maybe I'm really naive and thinking.
No, well, no, because it worked. You took that to Parliament. It got all those signatures. It got that recognition, and now we have a strategy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
If not for you.
Yeah, massive amount of work for free, which is also the other thing that I do sort of struggle with, in the sense of so much of this work is unpaid women's labour, to kind of advance gender equity. You just are doing it off the backs of women doing it for free. And I think that's also where, Project Gender, we do a lot of advocacy, but we really want to be able to fund that in a way that's allows us to kind of do it with joy, rather than oh my God, why will we never get any money for that? It's all of our labour and time, and not just ours, but other people that we work with. And so being able to flip it and go, okay, well, where do we have the most impact? How can we really turn that dial on gender equity? And definitely one strand is into government, but also business can be a real force for good, and that's where I like to play as well,
I want to, just before we get into the focus of where you're at, because there's a lot of focuses, but I want to talk, all of this stuff underlines your level of commitment. You go in guns blazing, and it demands a lot of energy, and it demands a real vision and determination. Where does that come from?
I don't know, honestly. I don't know. I was thinking about this, and I was like, I think for me, for a lot of my life, I've often lived with this fear, this sort of underlying sort of hum of fear, which is fear of disappointing people or rejection or heartache or failure or all of those things, or aging or whatever it might be. And my husband and I were living in different cities last year, and it was a really tough time for us. And we were writing each other lots of emails and letters. And I sort of woke up one night and I was like, oh my God, this thing that's always there is fear. And I wrote to him and I said, yeah, I just have this constant fear there. And he was like, what are you talking about? You're the most courageous person I know. And I was like, yeah, but it's this kind of fear of things that is the kind of impetus for a lot of stuff, of disappointing or whatever. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So, or the fear of failure or whatever it might be.
And
so,
was it the fact that you were more isolated, living your life apart from your family, from Dash and Alex, that you came to this realisation?
I think I had some space to kind of think about it. Yeah. Fascinating. And then I spoke to Erin Jackson, who is also one of the people at who I run Project Gender with, and I was like, oh my God, I'm motivated by fear. And she was like, so am I. And we were like, it's an incredible motivator. I don't think it's very healthy, but it is a real motivator.
And it probably, for most of us, is what we would identify with. What promotes us into action is that fear of what people will think. We've got to do something about this. We've got to prove ourselves. I think that's very real, and thank you for sharing that, because I think that light bulb will go on for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So how do you, I mean, I guess it also relates to where you've come from, with the influences you've had in your life in terms of that drive to do this stuff. Can you point to anything in terms of your own life?
Well, I'm one of 4 girls. I'm the eldest daughter of my amazing sisters, who we're all very different, but, we all have this kind of steely nature, I would say, which really comes from both parents, Dad was a real kind of visionary, and Mum, in her quiet way, equally so, I've come to realise over the years, and a lot of people say I'm very like my dad, and that's a great thing, but also he wasn't that great with money, and we lost our home, and he went bankrupt 3 times, and so I think for me, I just know that things aren't permanent, and so I don't really hold things very tightly. I'm like, oh well, these things, this is beautiful for the moment, but it could easily disappear. So I suppose that's why maybe I jump in. I go kind of boots and all, because I'm like, this is great right now, and it could go. Mm-hmm.
But it also brings us to where you are now, which is that whole area of about money, about talking about finances, about that aspect that obviously you saw what happened when your dad went through the mill. Losing your home's pretty serious.
Yeah, it was. It was awful, and it was also kind of what I came to realise, is that it's very hard to talk to people about money. It's one of those things, like, people would rather talk about, their own death than talk about money. We just really don't like talking about it. And, so often our personalities are, money often equals success, and how much money you have is how successful you are. So if you kind of question someone, and certainly, it's not to say that we didn't question Dad, but it was almost like an attack on him personally and his personality and who he was fundamentally. And it was never that. But, it's all bound up in that. And so I was really interested, to really kind of explore my own relationship with money, because I only bought my first house like a couple of years ago, because I just didn't understand the world of money. I didn't understand how it worked. I didn't understand the terms, any of that. And when I was running Double Denim with Anna, we got this client, which was a superannuation provider in Australia. And honestly, it was like deep end, go. And I just had to learn so fast about money and how to talk about retirement savings and all of this stuff. And I realised it was not that difficult. I realised that, the world of finance has very much excluded women from it, for sure. And the language around it is very gendered. But I was like, oh my God, it's not even that hard. And I got so angry that no one had taught me this stuff. And that had such an impact on my life and my ability to be able to kind of realise ideas and stuff that I'd had, because I didn't have enough capital, or because I just didn't know this stuff. And sort of over the last 5 years, Rachel Davies and I have been kind of playing around with this, and is it financial advice? Is it this? Is it that? And we were like, actually, at the very heart of this is our relationship with money, and our emotions affect our finances, and our finances are affected by our emotions. And so we wanted to play in that space, which is a space that people don't play in. Like the finance companies can't really play in the emotional state of money. But that's where we are now.
So, because this is the reality, is that 25% of women will go into retirement. Now, what's the statistic?
So
25, we'll have 25% less.
Yeah, in retirement. And that figure has gone up 5% in 1 year.
Wow.
And research done by the Financial Services Council showed that 80% of women rate their financial well-being as low or very low. 80%.
Wow.
You know, like that is the majority.
Exactly.
And I really talk about the fact that we have this gendered financial crisis in this country, and no one's really talking about it. And, you know, various things like the table and now High Money, which is the work that I'm doing with Rach, you know, we have to start talking about this, because when I think about it from a feminist perspective, you know, it's a really radical thing to have financially free women. And that's where so much of, I suppose, my drive comes from. It's like, I want us as women to have as much freedom as possible. And at the heart of that is the ability to be able to have financial freedom, because you can't budget your way out of poverty. You know, you can't get good healthcare. You know, all of these things, so much of it, like all just traces itself back to financial freedom.
So how the programs you mentioned, the table and the, what's that?
High Money.
High Money.
High Money.
What's the practical takeaway for women? What's going to happen if I come along to one of those sessions? Is it going to change my life?
Well, yes, Amanda, it will change your life. With High Money, it's really about inviting women to explore their relationship with money. So we talk about our money stories, we talk about our money beliefs, we invite people to kind of go, are those beliefs real? Like, where did you get them from? Is that a true thing? You know, one of the things that we've heard is that, you know, money is for wankers. And it's like, well, actually, wankers are wankers. Money is not a wanker. You know, like how do we kind of reframe that? Or I'm not very good at saving. It's like, is that true? Or is that because like over 90% of all marketing that is tailored toward women around financial freedom and wellness is about the fact that they're terrible. It's, you know, like they're just profligate spenders. And so but for men, it's like save your bonus and stuff like that. So there's all of these gendered assumptions. So we're really encouraging people to just kind of like step into it, have a look, explore it. And, you know, in doing this work with Rach, you know, my life has completely changed, and the way that I think about money and also my ability to build wealth has really changed as well, which is very exciting.
So tell us, like, how?
Yeah, okay.
Go on, tell us the story.
So what do you do? Well, actually, for me, it's actually been, like at the heart of it is actually looking at what do I think about money? And, you know, for me, it was like, oh, you know, to be an artist, or, you know, I don't want to participate in this capitalist, patriarchal world. And I actually feel like there are ways that you can navigate through that and still keep your values intact. And wanting to have financial freedom doesn't necessarily mean that you want to have like millions and millions of dollars and like fly around the world and rape the planet. It's actually like thinking about what's your upper limit, what's your lower limit, how do you want to kind of engage in the world, what do you want money for? Like even asking that question, it's like, actually, what do I want it for? Is it more shoes and dresses, or is it because you actually really want to engage, have more freedom and to spend with your family, or whatever it is? Maybe you want to sit around in your undies eating chips all day. Like, I don't care, but it's what's true for you. And so that for me has been this real turning point, because it's helped me get really conscious and clear about why I want money, what I want money to do for me, and what I want it to do for my community and for the work that I do. And then that also makes, you know, like pitching much easier, or asking for what you're worth, and all of that makes it a lot easier to do those things.
Brilliant.
And then, you know, then there's really practical stuff like the stuff that we do with the table. We run these events called Power Money Security, PMS, haha. And, we do sort of answer those really practical questions, or even just like we've got a glossary of terms which allow women to understand like these terms.
All the jargon.
I'm like, and I think another part is also thinking about how do we create metaphors that really resonate with women? Because, when people talk about the stock market, honestly, sometimes I'm like, what? And then when you give a different metaphor, I'm like, oh, I've totally got it. I can do that. That's fine.
So you've done a whole repackaging on the language of money, which is an amazing gift. Right.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Oh, that's fantastic, Angela. Go you.
Thank you.
And clearly having results with women, clearly seeing light bulbs go on and people going, yeah, I get it, I'm going to change.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that we've only just really started the High Money. It's an online course now because we wanted to be able to reach as many women as possible and allow as many women to have access to it. But we do these weekly Zooms and we're getting great feedback of so many people just going, oh. And one of the key exercises we do is we encourage people to have a conversation with money. That's why it's called High Money. Like, hi, money.
Oh, that kind of, I was thinking about H-I-G-H.
Yeah, this is
Hi, money.
Well, it could be that as well, but it's like, hi, money. I just want to talk to you about our relationship. And I noticed that you're going in and out a little bit too frequently or, whatever it might be. And people really get a lot out of that, because it sort of just takes it back to something that we all have, which we're all very good at relationships. And when you kind of put money into that world or in that realm, it makes it a lot more approachable.
Oh, brilliant. I'm going to have a conversation with money.
Oh, yeah, we can totally do it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Totally.
Love it. It's my favourite thing.
Is it taken over from tarot cards? Because you're an awesome tarot reader as well.
Oh, look,
if you had them here, we could do a session now.
I should have bought them, didn't
I know.
Yeah, I do love a bit of tarot.
Yeah, it's another one of those things that you just do brilliantly. Okay, so let's looking ahead and looking where we're at. There's a million things of those CO words that I was going to take you through, which I haven't, because I've got wrapped up in all the things that you're doing. I knew this would happen. I guess for you, it's how do you cope? How do you deal with some of the hard stuff? Because you're dealing with a lot of hard stuff, especially when you're working with women who may be disadvantaged in the project gender stuff. Where's the light?
That's a really good question. I mean, I love exercise. I really do. And I know people are like, oh, really, do you? But I do. I really enjoy it. And I like to move my body. So whether that's going for a walk or a jog or a hike, ideally a hike. I love, stalking around the hills, quite sort of like,
You once walked from Wellington to Palmerston North.
I did. And
over the Aotearoa ranges. Why would you do that?
Well, when I was thinking about like courage, that was one of the things. Like I just wanted to get into nature and walk because that's how I process things. And I realised that was one of the most courageous things for me personally, because it was physical and it was just me. And I couldn't whinge to anyone about how tired I was because no one was there to hear. But there were definitely some hairy moments on that particular hike.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I love kind of the bigness of nature and realizing that whatever I think is, it's pretty insignificant in those moments. And I love karaoke. I go and sing, I dance, badly, but with enthusiasm. One of the bitch's motto is what we lack in technique, we make up for in passion. And, friends and connection and that kind of stuff is really important. And I also really like spending some time by myself, just pottering around the house is quite important to me. And just
Time must be scarce, though. That's one thing. You're yet another, like many of the women that I know and work with, it's that thing about hard to say no.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I
mean,
yeah.
I suppose, I think about that, but I'm genuinely quite curious about a lot of things. So if I find it interesting, then I'll give it a crack. But if it's not of interest to me, or if I just there's just not physically able to do it, then yeah.
So right now, though, in terms of the challenges you've got ahead of you, what's the number one priority for you?
I think number one priority, sort of, I suppose, business-wise, or, want to finish this year strong, etc., is, getting high money out into the world and getting as many women as possible signed up and doing that.
Let's just go to you as a coach, CEO word. Your tips right now for helping people. What can we take that's something practical that will help right now change lives? What can you give us?
I would encourage people to think about their audiences, and I would say that women are not a niche. We are, in fact, the market. 80% of all purchasing decisions are made by women. So that would be a great place to start, and to ask yourself, what am I doing for the women in my organisation? What am I doing for my female customers? All of that stuff. I think that's a really great place to start, and it is just full of untapped potential. Yeah, I would do that. My sort of personal mantra is hold things lightly but with great care. And, most people are not thinking about you,
as much as we think they should be. Yeah,
I used to feel kind of like, oh my God, if I did this. And then I think it was my mum just said, everyone's thinking about themselves. And I was like, there's actually real freedom in kind of embracing that. So I'm kind of off doing my thing. No one else is really worried about what I'm up to, which gives you this opportunity to play. And I would encourage people to play and be playful and just give things a go and see, there might be something really interesting in this idea or that idea. And for me, it's finding people that you really click with, and working with Erin and Tanya at Project Gender is a great joy. We have a lot of fun. We're all very driven, very motivated, and we've got this common purpose. So when we crack on, boy, do we crack on, That's really exciting.
And you've certainly proved that. You've gone, wherever you've gone, you've blazed a trail. You've created historic research about the lives of women in New Zealand. You've been brave. You've put bloody lycra on in front of the world. The things you've done, Angela, Meyer, and you're going to continue to do are amazing. So thank you so much for being part of Courageous Conversations. You are a courageous woman, and I salute you, and it's been fantastic to have your company.
Thank you so much, Amanda. It's been great to chat.